Yeah, I'll just clarify. There's actually 3 items on your agenda, and they all basically correspond to the same project. New business item number 1, as you just stated, is an annexation request for just under 690 acres. Those are for parcels that are currently located outside of the town limits in unincorporated York County and have a zoning designation, as was discussed earlier, as light industrial. And we do have a general location that we'll put up on the screen. It's basically 4 parcels. One is to the north and the south of the town's wastewater treatment plant on Spratt Street. The next one is the lion's share of the property, basically all of the red in this area on both sides of Fort Mill Parkway. The third parcel, again, is bisected by Fort Mill Parkway, just to the east of the intersection with Spratt Street, and then the last parcel is down by the river. So the request for these items that's before you is to adopt a annexation ordinance. This is separate from the actual concept plan and the development agreement for the property. If approved, that request would be to bring those 600, almost 90 acres into the town of Fort Mill with a zoning designation of MXU, which is our mixed-use district. And we did include a note in our staff write-up. Anytime that we have an annexation request come before you, we will review it for consistency with the comprehensive plan for the town. And the comp plan for the town, which was amended earlier this year, does show the future zoning designation for that property as mixed use. So it was our opinion that that was consistent with the comprehensive plan that you all have adopted. Most of the actual items related to the actual development plan will be covered in new business item number 3. This request, as it stands before you, is just for the annexation of those 4 parcels to bring them into the town limits with a zoning designation of mixed use.
Any further discussion?
I have a few comments I'd like to make.
Thank you.
Most people are not aware that Baxter is not in the town limits of Fort Mill, and there's a reason. And the reason is when Baxter was being conceived, Springland came to the Fort Mill Town Council and asked that we send water and sewer under the interstate to Baxter. And there were people on the Fort Mill Town Council that did not want Fort Mill to grow. So they said no. Just like Springland didn't have enough sense to go to Rock Hill and get water and sewer. You got Baxter sitting over there. There's not one less house than if it had been in Fort Mill. There's not one less car on the highway than if it had been in Fort Mill. There's not one less child in the Fort Mill school system. So when Mr. Spratt conceived this idea, there are several things he could have done. He came to Fort Mill. He's been here longer than dirt. He wanted to have his property handled in such a way that would be good for Fort Mill. Now, I know we got traffic. I live in Whitewell Park, back behind Hardy's. And if I get out at 8 o'clock in the morning and I get in all that traffic, it's not somebody going from Whitewell Park to White Grove. It's somebody going from the vicinity of 521 to the vicinity of TGK. That's where our traffic problem is. Mr. Spratt, and somebody made the statement, we rushed to judgment. No, we've been talking about this thing for 6 or 8 months. And Mr. Spratt and his representatives came to the council. They had their plan, and it went over and over, and we talked about the Planning Commission. I attended that meeting, and believe me, when you attend a Fort Mill Planning Commission meeting, when they get through, there's nothing else to discuss about that matter, whatever the matter is. So, but Mr. Spratt, if we turned it this, back in the Old West, when it was against the law or capital punishment to steal a horse, This guy had been convicted of stealing a horse, and the judge told me he had a choice. He could either go to his demise with a firing squad or a gallows. And the guy said, I don't like either of those choices. I want to retire to Hawaii. And the judge said, that's not your choice. And our choice is not to accept the property as the town and Mr. Spratt and his representative agreed to. And if we turn it down, it won't be built. That's not in the choice. Because Mr. Spratt, first place he could go to, it's been brought up, a light industrial. I don't know, but I'd rather get behind a car than I would a tractor trailer, just for some reason or another. This property is also fronts on the Catawba River. Right across the river is Rock Hill's Riverwalk. Mr. Spratt could have gone to his good friend Doug Eccles, who's mayor of Rock Hill, and said, hey, Dougie boy, why don't you annex my property and we'll bring it in to Rock Hill? And I'm sure Mr. Eccles would not have said, oh, for heaven's sakes, no, that's Fort Mill. Would never do that. They can't wait to do that. So our choice is to bring in the property. I realize it's 3,000 houses, I know that. But again, I look at what happened with Baxter. A lot of people here live in White Grove. I remember people that hunted squirrels in White Grove, and they got upset when White Grove was being built. And this happens every time we come up with something. But we just have to look at the situation that we have and what is the best for Fort Mill, and I think what we're proposing is the best for Fort Mill. And I think some of the suggestions brought up, and particularly the back bike path, I think that's a good idea. But our decision as a council is not one that we're either going to approve this and they'll build the houses, or we won't approve it and the houses won't be built. That's not our choice.
Thank you, Mr. Huntley. Further comment?
Yeah, Joe, as planning director, just to kind of back up on what Mr. Huntley's saying, the options that we have when it comes to annexing, we can leave it in the county as it currently is and let the county council have control, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that county council is comprised of how many people that live inside the Fort Mill town limits?
In the town limits?
Yes, sir.
0 as far as I know.
Okay. Or we can allow Rock Hill to potentially annex it. Do they have that ability to do so?
You can annex across a river, yes.
Okay. And then the third choice is that this town council could have control over it, correct?
Correct.
So that's our only three options when it comes to where this property is located, correct?
Correct.
And then when it comes to annexing, if Rock Hill were to annex it, it would still remain in the Fort Mill School District, correct?
Yes.
So those kids would still come to Fort Mill schools and be a burden to our school system.
They would still go to Fort Mill
Or
schools,
school
that's
district, I'm
correct.
sorry.
But they would be citizens of the city of Rock Hill, South Carolina, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Okay,
the
thank
traffic
you
would
for
still,
clearing.
the traffic would still be in Fort Mill.
So if it was annexed
If
to
it
Rock
was
Hill,
annexed.
yes, there would be
But the traffic would
residents
still-
of Rock Hill.
Yeah, but the traffic would still be here.
So Rock Hill could potentially move their city boundary just across from where Brickyard Road is, across from the flower shop. Am I right about that?
Legally, yes. I mean, whether they would have any interest in doing that would be a
Just more
policy decision, and
Right.
whether the applicant would approach them or not. But legally, a river or a body of water does not destroy contiguity for the sake of annexation.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Further comment?
I just wanted to comment on, came out as fast tracking. This council does not fast track anything. We don't care if you have 7 acres, 700 acres, or 7,000 acres. We don't care if your name is Spratt, Smith, or Jones. We treat everybody equally. We treat everybody fairly. And when we take on consideration, we do not make it lightly. We have talked about this in chambers. We have talked about this out here. We have talked about it in private. All decisions that are made in this town are not taken lightly. We have nothing but the highest interests and best intentions for this town. We all know how great this town is, and that lovely lady, she's not here now, I empathize with her. Roads don't make Fort Mill great. The people make it great. And that's why you all are here, because you want to keep it great. Having this jacket on doesn't make me a different person. I can take this jacket off, I'm still going to be me. Putting a couple roads in isn't going to change Fort Mill as long as the spirit of the town, which I see in this chamber, stays as it is.
Jamie and I are the only two that sit on this council that are not from Fort Mill. I grew up in Dillon, South Carolina, where my parents have to drive 45 miles to the nearest dry cleaner. If I would, I mean, this is a great place. I've lived here 15 years. I want to stay here the rest of my life, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Thank you for your comments, Jamie. That I just appreciate y'all's input and willing to care for the town. And thank y'all for coming.
Trudie?
It's good to see a big crowd, even though sometimes you maybe the crowd didn't come out for a particular reason or the reason that you thought that they should come out for. We'd like to see people like a big house full at every meeting. That would be good. And Chris probably doesn't know this, but I'm not originally from Fort Mill. Some folks know it. I actually was born in Rock Hill, moved to Fort Mill when I was 12. So I'm really not a Fort Mill native, or at least that's what my husband tells me. He tells me if I live to be 100, I still won't because I wasn't born here.
Shouldn't have. There wasn't a hospital here.
That didn't stop some people.
That's a whole other meeting.
But Fort Mill is my home, regardless of what he says. He was born here, and we have 2 children. One was born in Savannah when he was in the Air Force, and one was born here. Of course, Fort Mill has grown. Am I going to leave Fort Mill? No. It has definitely changed. Those of us, Ronnie and I graduated high school. Steve was with us when we were in high school. It has definitely changed since then. But the only thing that we as a council can do is the changes that we do make, that we make the best, that we make the decisions the best that we can for the people of the town.
As we continue on with the events of the evening, I just want to say thank you to Mr. Spratt and to his ancestors for founding Fort Mill. You know, we talk about each of us what Fort Mill means to us, and I hate to say it, I'm non-native either, moved here when I was 10, but there was only one high school when I moved here, so. But, you know, I still consider myself a native. I still love this family like you wouldn't believe. I mean, Mr. Spratt, the lady was here earlier about the cemetery on Brickyard Road. The one thing that one of the things Mr. Spratt wants to preserve is that cemetery. And I have to say, that cemetery is what Fort Mill's about. That goes back to our ancestry, to the Native Indians and the Spratt family in the very beginning of Fort Mill. So when you want to talk about Fort Mill, what it is, it's preserving those type of history and artifacts that are out there for us. Fort Mill is a great town. To Jamie's point, it's the people that are here. We're going to have changes, and we're going to have changes that some of us like and don't like. Trust me, I voted against several things that have gotten passed, and I have to suck it up and deal with the decisions of our council because that's what happens. We vote as a majority, and we have to follow through with that, whether we like that decision or not. So just know that we have really thought about this wholeheartedly. There will be still more questions to come. This first question is just on annexation, so there's still more about the development agreement and processes. But I encourage you as we go through this to really look at yourself and what you've done to become familiar with what this town and this council does to make these decisions. If you guys think, and according to Facebook, we do this for fame and fortune. Yeah, exactly. That's the last thing I want is my picture on the front page. But, the fortune we make, all $200 a month after taxes, it's not paying the bills. Hate to tell you, but we all have jobs on top of this. We do this because we are passionate about the town. And I hope you realize through this evening that the passion in this council is much greater than you will get of the other 2 entities that could be involved with this process.
I've only been in Fort Mill 68 years.
I was going to say, listen to all these newcomers.
I think I was born here. I was born in a hospital that's no longer here. It's called St. Philip's Hospital in Rock Hill. That's where I was born at. But far as, that's the reason I got on council, because I am very concerned about what happens in Fort Mill. That's my passion when I ran for council, was because I was very concerned about Fort Mill, the history of Fort Mill, and the people of Fort Mill. I graduated Fort Mill High School in 1966. We're having our 50th graduation reunion this year. I got daughters older than you. But if, from what I understand of the meetings that we've had, the York County has given Mr. Spratt permission to build homes on that land that he owns. So they can, I mean, he can still build the homes, whether we approve it or not, or whether we control it or not. So, I mean, we're just trying to do the best that we can with what we have to work with in the city limits of Fort Mill.
All right, I've been here 60 years, and I follow 2 generations. This is the most I've ever known council to speak at any single council meeting, including the one where we considered building a water plant. And I've been on council nearing 10 years. This town is near and dear to all of us, especially those of us that have seen the majority of changes. And those of you that came after us, we welcomed you. And we worked to accommodate that the people that came here wanted to be here. I think that the presentation, and we will allow Hank, Mr. Spratt's representative, to speak a minute about the project. None of us, I would dare say, not one council member up here wants 2,900 homes in the town, new homes. We just don't. We would prefer business. We would prefer commercial. But I don't think you'll find one council member that would deny that having public access to the Catawba River, having public parks, having preservation of the cemetery, if it were not for Mr. Spratt, there wouldn't be a parkway, because he worked to contribute substantially to the land that the parkway sits on. So I do think that there are many things to be considered when we look at a proposal such that has been presented to us. And we have been more than thorough and careful in our consideration. We have not voted on this, and we won't until shortly from now. But we want you to know how much effort we've put into this. This is not happening on a fast track or a whim. It is not a knee-jerk reaction. It doesn't have anything to do with greed. It has to do with a proposal. We follow our process, and we are asking for as many concessions and lessening of impact as possible to determine what's right for the community. And that's the very best that we can do for you, our constituents. Hank, did you want to present anything too? Are you good?
I reserve until after the development.
All right, good enough. Any further comment? All those in favor, I have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor for the ordinance annexing the tax map numbers there indicated on new business item number 1, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. So be it.
Mayor, I think Ms. McCarley's motion was to consider the item. I don't think it was for approval.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the new business item number 1.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mack. Do I have a second to approve? Do I have a second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Thank you, Mr. Mack. New business item 2, an ordinance amending the zoning map of the town of Fort Mill so as to change the zoning designation for the York County tax map numbers 020060150, 02001210002, and 02001220012, such parcels containing approximately 23.15 plus or minus acres located at or near Kanawha Street and Brickyard Road from R10 residential and R15 residential to mixed use. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion we move to new business item number 2 for discussion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion, please.
All right, so Joe, from what I understand, this is a change from being solely residential to mixed use, which does allow for what going forward?
Correct. The properties are current, we have a map up on the screen. Properties are currently zoned, the large one along the railroad tracks zoned R10, which is a single-family residential. The one up along Spratt Street, we kind of refer to that one as the Arrowhead piece. That's the one that comes up. I think that's an old, it might be Alexander Street, I believe. And then the third one is down on Brickyard Road, and those three pieces contain, I think it was a little over 20 acres. Right now they are 23.15 acres. Right now they are zoned to allow single-family residential. We do have the property marked in relation to our future land use map from the comprehensive plan. The future land use map basically defines that area as medium-density residential, and the request is for mixed use. The property is basically adjacent and in common ownership for the 600, almost 90 acres that you just gave first reading to, also with the zoning designation of mixed use. And if you look ahead to item number 3, the planned use for that location is single-family residential, which in our opinion is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The zoning would be mixed use, but the anticipated development in that location would be single-family residential, which in our opinion was consistent with the comprehensive plan that you've adopted.
Further questions or discussion?
So mixed use versus light industrial, for clarification, that allows for retail and commercial rather than, as we start talking about the next piece, light industrial is a totally different classification. So that commercial area, if we wanted to build a hobos on the tracks there, we would still have the ability to do so, whereas currently zoned residential, we would not be able to, correct?
Yes and no. The last pieces that you just dealt with were zoned light industrial. These ones are already in the town. That's why you're considering a rezoning and not an annexation. You don't have to annex it if it's already in the town limits. These pieces, the mixed-use district does give some flexibility as to what you can put on the property once it's rezoned. But that zoning district also, per our ordinance, our zoning ordinance, has to be tied to either a development agreement or development conditions, basically stipulating what can be placed on the property and at what density. And what's been proposed in item number 3, the development agreement, was not so much commercial for this location as single-family residential. But elsewhere on the property, you would be able to put retail, restaurants, hotels, things that may not otherwise be permitted there today.
Thank you.
Further questions about the zoning?
Can we ask a question? Am I allowed to or no? Is that possible?
We're not supposed to. What's the question?
Well, only because that little arrow piece literally backs up to my house and to some other people here. And it's a very tiny parcel of land. And right now it's residential. Why would we change it if it's already residential? Why would we mix it up and put mixed use, and I may end up with something that completely depletes my property value, as opposed to just leaving it as residential? I mean, why change it to mixed use if it's already residential?
Mixed use includes residential.
Oh, I mean, why change it from mixed use to just residential? I know, but see, with it being mixed use, if we change it back to mixed use, then you could easily go and put a commercial building behind me as opposed to a house.
But you have to look at the highest and best use of the property too, and no one's going to put a building, a commercial building right.
The land doesn't lend itself to that
Right.
use. I think they're looking for continuity of the whole tract of
Because
land.
they're zoning the whole.
So because it's part of that, then it has to go with everything else.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Just so everybody will know, there are rules and regulations about how to handle these meetings so that they don't get out of hand and we don't get off track. No, no, no. No, I'm saying, I saw something on your face that said you needed to ask. So we truthfully want to be helpful. We want to be helpful, and I appreciate that. So thank you. All right, any further questions about the zoning of this property? Do I have a motion to approve or deny?
You do.
No, I don't.
We had
No,
a
we have a
motion for
motion
discussion.
to discuss.
I make
Motion
a-
to-
I listened this time.
You can go.
Make a motion to accept business item number 2.
I have a motion for business item number 2 for acceptance. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. The passing of business item number 2. Item number 3, an ordinance authorizing the entry by the town of Fort Mill into a development agreement with Kanawha Land LLC for property located at York County tax map numbers, 661-0000002, 708-0000017, 708-0000018, less and accept a .98 acre portion of the York County tax map number 708-0000018, described in the deed of one-third interest to John M. Spratt, recorded in the deed book 1715, page 123. 661-0000014-020-06-01-050-02-00121. I bid on that one. 02002 and 0200122, such parcels containing approximately 714 plus or minus acres located at or near Spratt Street, U.S. Highway 21 Business, Brickyard Road, Kanawha Street, and Fort Mill Parkway, authorizing the execution and delivery of such development agreement and other matters relating thereto. That is in Ward 1, Councilman Shirey.
Could you repeat that?
No. I just wanted to get a nice painting out of it. Kidding. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll make
So
a
move
motion
to what?
That we approve.
You have moved to approve.
Business item number 3.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion?
I definitely would like to discuss this. So this, if you thought that before was fun, this is really the meat and potatoes of what I think most of you are here about. It's really, what is the vision for this property going forward and the look for it? And I know Mr. Hank's here to represent Spratt, so if council's okay, I'd like for you to make your way up and give us a little bit of discussion. While he's coming, Joe, can you also
That's
tell
your
us?
cue, Hank.
Yeah, come on, Hank. Give me some time to get through the crowd. Prior, this property was zoned as light industrial. Light industrial, give us some examples of what light industrial and the county's version of what was envisioned for this property would be.
Yeah, I think one of the misconceptions tends to be that if the town didn't annex and rezone the property, that it would stay rural or agricultural in perpetuity. And I think one thing that you need to consider is if you have property, you have to give somebody a right to develop something on their property. And you do that through your zoning designation. And we had this in the annexation request. The part that's being has been given first reading to be annexed is zone light industrial. The rezoning pieces are R10 and R15 currently, but the overwhelming majority of the property is light industrial. And if the property were to stay in the county, or if somebody were to come in and say submit an application to develop the property today, we went through, and we do this for all requests that come before council, where it's a change from the county's existing zoning. Some of the items that would be permitted today on the property would include agriculture and livestock, including raising and processing of livestock. I'm not a Fort Mill native, but I do understand that the town has some history with the chicken gut factory. Automobile and boat service, broadcasting stations, car wash and detail shops, greenhouses, kennels, light industrial uses including shops, research labs, and laundry plants, manufacturing facilities, mining facilities, outdoor recreation, professional office, retail sales with some restrictions on what percentage of the property could be used for retail, schools, warehousing and wholesale distribution facilities, and religious institutions. And all of those would be permitted by right today under the county's current zoning designation. I'm going to let, if you guys are okay, I'll let Hank give you an overview of what the applicant is proposing.
Thank you. Hi, Hank. Would you introduce yourself to the audience?
Well, thank you. I appreciate your giving us the opportunity to come, and I'm proud to represent Mr. John Spratt. As you know, the Hills family has been stewards of this property for over 250 years, back before the Revolution. I know it's an emotional thing. I'm not going to insult anybody's intelligence by telling you there's not going to be any impacts to development of this property, because there is. But I'd like to answer some of those questions with some facts. Joe, can you put up that traffic? Yeah. This is an Excel spreadsheet that's a trip generation rate from the 8th edition of the International Traffic Engineers Trip Generation Report. The county has been bantering the number of 9,000 jobs for this area and this thing. If you will look at this interactive spreadsheet and how it works, you plug in the number of dwelling units, it gives you the number of daily trips that a project does. If you plug in 2,900 units in this spreadsheet, it gives you a total trip number a day of 24,249 trips. If you plug 9,000 jobs into light industrial, you get 27,180 trips. That's a difference of 2,931 trips less for residential than for light industrial. 9,000 jobs, a trip for an employee to go there and come back would generate 18,000 of those trips, of those 29,000 trips. Light industrial, which the county's touting warehousing and distribution facilities, you can guess what the type of vehicle is going to be on the 5,430 less trips or more trips that the warehousing is going to be. It's going to be 18-wheel trucks, because that's what supports warehousing and light industrial. So not only are you going to have less trips, you're going to have 5,000 fewer trips, and those 5,000 are going to be largely 18-wheel trucks. Okay. Now, this is not my math up here. This is generally accepted professional data from, and this is the 8th iteration of it. They have changed this thing 8 times as more data points have come in, so it's pretty accurate. It's what traffic engineers use to do traffic studies on pieces of property. Now, part of the development agreement is that before any development can take place, there has to be a traffic impact analysis study done, and the developer is responsible for keeping the level of service on the roads where they are right now. So Mr. Spratt has done the best he can do to mitigate traffic, and as a matter of fact, there'll be less traffic. Schools, 9,000 jobs. If you take the census number for York County and you multiply it by the 4.9 unemployment rate, you get approximately 11,000 people that are unemployed. Now that includes babies, infants, people over 65, whatever. So if you extrapolate all that down, you get to about 7,000 unemployed people that are eligible for these types of jobs, okay? And that includes both sexes, okay? So that's very conservative. All right, so if you're going 9,000 jobs, just say you've got half of those can be filled by people that already live in York County. All right, that's 4,500. You're still gonna have 4,500 new household creations to do 9,000 jobs. Okay? That's 1,600 more units than what Mr. Spratt is proposing.
Just for clarification, what is the definition of a trip? Is just a round trip in a vehicle? I'm just.
A trip?
A trip is a one-way trip.
One-way trip.
So for the chart that we were just looking at, it's from the Institute of either Traffic or Transportation, it's one of the two, engineers. They do studies on a national basis, and they can, from those studies, basically pinpoint, on average, depending on the type of use, how many one-way trips will be generated for that particular use. They can also drill down, and they use from national data what percentage of those are at peak travel times. So you can go in and look at AM peak and PM peak, and use that to drill down. And as Hank said, when they do traffic studies, they'll look at the ITE data, the amount of AM, PM peak trips. And one thing that you'll notice in a project like this is when you have a mixed-use project as opposed to a single-use project, you tend to get, and Hank didn't hit on this, I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder, but you tend to get a lot of internal capture. So if you have employment as well as different types of residential, you can tend to capture a lot more of that internally to a project, as opposed to if you had all the residential over here and all of the commercial over here and the schools over here and so forth. You're moving a lot more traffic through a corridor. And there are provisions when you do a traffic study to account for internal capture.
So
So
when we
now-
look at an example real quick, Hank, when we look at an example of light industrial, Carowinds Boulevard's a pretty good example of light industrial, correct?
Right there,
I mean,
Regent Park,
yeah,
where
you've
all
got
the distribution
churches and
facilities
distribution and, okay, but when we look at mixed use here, and what you're talking about, the vision is a little bit more like a Baxter, where you've got retail right there, the YMCA, that type of thing, where people are riding golf carts or bikes, that type of thing. That's what you mean by interconnectivity and staying in. Okay.
Correct. I mean, especially if you have retail, say you have a grocery store, restaurants, those types of things. If it's all internal on one project, you wouldn't expect someone from this neighborhood to be driving up to 160 to go to a grocery store or a restaurant. You'd be able to capture a lot more of those trips internally. Whereas if the project was used solely for light industrial, you would have people going there to work in the morning, leaving to go, wherever, to Baxter, 160, whatever, to go to lunch, coming back, and then leaving in the afternoon. You typically don't see a lot of grocery stores and restaurants and supporting type uses in your industrial zoning districts. And I think that contributes to some extent to the fact that you for certain types of uses may expect to see more trips from an industrial use than you would from more of a self-contained mixed-use community.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
So if you take the emotion out of it, and it's hard to argue with emotion because you can't refute emotion with fact, but if you take the emotion out of it, the facts say that you'll have less traffic and you'll have less unit creation. Now the other thing about light industrial, and if I can step over here to the map, if you can read a topo map, if anybody here, does anybody not be able to read a topo map? This is U.S. Foods. Okay? You see the topo here, and you see the topo here. There's no lines on this piece of property right here. And the reason for that is because that's mass graded, and every tree has been denuded from it. And that's what you have to do to have light industrial warehousing or distribution. You can't put 18-wheel trucks on topography challenged property.
That's U.S. Foods. right? That's currently U.S. Foods.
Yeah. So what you're looking for, and if this goes light industrial, you're looking at a mass graded denuded site. Whereas the Spratt proposal borders on 40% open green space right now, and probably by the time it gets developed, we'll be pushing 50% undisturbed green space and undisturbed trees. Okay? Now, the final thing is when Fort Mill Parkway was done 25 or so years ago, Mr. Spratt was promised that he could do residential on his property. And in fact, I don't know, can you put up the 2025 plan? This is the 2025 comprehensive plan of York County. And if you look, Joe can put the thing, right there, that gold piece right there is Mr. Spratt's property. If you look at the legend, the gold is medium to high density residential. Okay? Now they're in the process of changing this, changing it to light industrial, which is what Joe has put up there right now. And if you scroll over to I-77, okay, you see all that's not the right plan, though.
You're looking for the pending?
Yeah,
I have
the proposed plan.
So while he's pulling that up, just to reiterate what you said in a different way, the county currently has that on their plan for high-density residential?
As of this date. They are proposing to change it, but they have not changed it yet.
Okay.
So it is still current. Now, they have created what they call the I-77 employment corridor, which shows light industrial all up and down I-77. I mean, more light industrial than this community could ever absorb. So there are better places than in the middle of downtown Fort Mill to put 18-wheel trucks and that kind of industrial density. As you see right here, all that purple property is earmarked for light industrial. Okay? So they don't need to put light industrial for job creation in the middle of downtown Fort Mill. We're not asking to, we're not asking for the county or the city or anybody else to forego job creation. We know that's an important part of it too. But, we're not going to have no impact on the area. We know that. But we tried to mitigate the impact by doing mixed use, by doing over 50% green space, by donating public access to the river, by donating public parks, by requiring a 2.5-mile circular trail connecting Spratt Cemetery to the river, doing a TIA in the very beginning, and to address the fact that this is kind of a rushed, hurry-up thing. When we first started this deal, we met with Mayor Funderburk.
Not me.
Okay, and several council people. Mr. Spratt wanted to create a legacy for himself and his family for the stewardship of their property. At the initial meeting, we told the county staff, Dennis and Joe, that we wanted the county to be partners in this and to help us design this so that it would be good for the town of Fort Mill, as good as growth can be for the town of Fort Mill. The input has been extensive by the town. Buffers, you name it. Bigger lot sizes, green space requirements.
Age targeted.
Yeah, right on down, age targeted, right on down the line. So this has been a well thought out public process that has gone on for, close to 8 months now. Any questions?
And so from the original point, we were at, I think, like 125,000 square feet of commercial when you first started with the project.
That's correct.
And now we have grown to 350,000,
That's correct.
350,000 square feet commercial minimum,
That's correct.
but with the opportunity for basically as much as the
Unlimited.
market will bear. So it's
Unlimited.
unlimited. So when we,
3,400 homes. The original request was for 3,400 homes.
And I've got to say that was, that was a win for the town, and we're not quite convinced that that's, the market will bear that, but because of tax base and impact to schools and internal capture of trips and things like that, it was important to the town that they maximize the number of commercial square footage.
so this still can be developed with businesses and bringing business tax base to us without the visual of what the light industrial would bring, correct?
Yeah, the way the draft development agreement's worded, it would allow any commercial use that's permitted in our local commercial and the highway commercial zoning district. So it would allow a variety of commercial uses, anything from restaurant, retail, hotel, hospital, medical, service, personal service.
We are
but
never getting a hospital.
We're getting two.
Yeah, so I mean, you would have a variety, and it could be anything from small scale, Main Street type, like a Market Street, Baxter, or something like that, or larger scale, what you see out at Kingsley with large office projects or supporting restaurants or whatnot. So it's designed to be flexible in nature. So having it mixed use gives you that flexibility that you have, like we see in Kingsley or out at Springfield Town Center now, where you may not necessarily know what specifically on day one may be going into that location, but it does refer back to our zoning ordinance and a list of permitted uses within those two highway and local commercial districts. So basically you'd be permitting, at a minimum 350,000 square feet of commercial. And I think the zoning will really dictate what the maximum will be. The market will dictate what the maximum will be. But in regards to some of the other things that, we were able to, for some things we had to push a little bit, but having things like tree preservation, streetscape requirements, buffer requirements, open space, obviously there's a very large open space component, which this will really give us the first public access to the river on the Fort Mill side that the town would own. That's proposed to be donated, about 65 acres to the town, that you all can decide with input from the community as in regards to what types of facilities or access you would like to see in those locations. As Hank mentioned, the 2.5 mile or so trail system, which could tie into other trails on the Fort Mill and the Rock Hill side of the river. And I think one thing that kind of gets lost in the message is you think a project this big, you think of it in terms of, you approve it today and there's going to be 2,900 homes there tomorrow. And the way that the development agreement is worded, and I think that this was a very important component of the agreement, is that it has a 20-year build-out schedule. Now, to put that in context, like in terms of a school impact, if you have a kid who moves into the very first home that's built on this property, they'll be out of high school and hopefully in college before the last home is built on the property. So it's a very long build-out program. On average, you may expect to see approximately 150. If they were able to do all 2,900 on the property, You might see up to 150 per year. And to put that in context, we have Waterside at the Catawba, which is building out on White's Road. I mean, just in the last 18 months, we've done about 350 homes just in that one subdivision. So it's it's paced or spread out in a way where it's not going to be, a 3-year or a 5-year impact. It's going to be a very long build-out process for the project to be completed.
Can you put the site plan back up there? You see the 2 orange pieces of property right next to the sewer plant? Okay. I had to rush to the printer this morning to get that done because he beat me up over that just yesterday. So that added a commercial component to those 2 things to accommodate the additional commercial space.
Could you elaborate more on the 3.0 acres, just adjoining that, adjacent to the orange?
That's a donation for expansion of the city's sewer plant that Mr. Spratt agreed to donate for that purpose. The white square there is the city's wastewater treatment plant. The city at this time, I believe, is either studying or is in engineering to increase the capacity of the wastewater plant. They needed 3 acres, and Mr. Spratt gave them 3 acres.
And just for the sake of anybody who may be seeing this plan for the first time, the way the color coding on the map works is the light yellow is areas that are intended for single-family residential. The brownish color is proposed multifamily locations. The orange color, as Hank just mentioned, those could be multifamily, commercial, or a mixture of multifamily and commercial. The red is the primary commercial locations. The bluish color over here is for the future utility plant expansion for the wastewater treatment plant. The dark green, which includes all this land down by the river, including, I guess you call this Spratt Island?
Spratt Island.
Down on the river, would be proposed for donation, as well as a little over 8 acres up at the top of the map surrounding the historic Spratt Cemetery, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. And then the last component is this light green portion down here closest to the river, which would be set aside just for open space and conservation uses.
How wide is that road going to be going through the middle of that? Is that still going to be 2 lanes after this is completed, or is it going to be 4 lanes?
Which road are you talking about?
That's the bypass.
That's the bypass.
That's what I'm talking about. The current 2-lane road.
We've talked with the county about the need for widening, and I believe we will have some pennies discussions very shortcoming on the need for widening the bypass in total.
Why don't you have a guy in a necktie back here? He's a man to talk to.
Yeah, so,
Oh, he had to point you out,
So-
didn't he?
so one of the other items on tonight's agenda is to discuss roadways
Yes.
specifically. So we've got a whole presentation specifically on roadways.
Okay.
But I think it's important to what Mayor just said, is that there have been discussions already with county regarding the road structure.
That's correct.
So for clarity, what we are talking about today is specifically just building as Mayor has said, a box to be able to allow Mr. Spratt and his LLC to sell this land for development. At the time this is sold and a developer is in place, they will be coming back to Planning Commission and Council for approval of what their plans, to someone else's point, what architectural review will look like, what green spaces will look like, all of that to meet our approval and go through the due diligence of the Planning Commission. Correct?
Yeah, this is really just the first step, putting the framework or the parameters in place. There will be a lot of other steps before you see the first shovel hit dirt out on this property. As we mentioned, a traffic impact study is in the agreement, has to be completed before any development occurs. And that traffic study would be done by a qualified engineer and would determine, once we have a better idea of how the specific project will be laid out, specific uses and densities, they would use that information to determine what the off-site impact would be and what improvements would be required in order to mitigate that impact. It could be lane widenings, it could be realignments, it could be turn lanes, it could be any number of things. But that's something that we would work in consultation with the applicant, their traffic engineer, and the DOT in order to identify and make sure that any off-site improvements would be completed. We would also have, we do have in the agreement 2 new items that you had requested at our last executive session meeting. An archaeological study is included, as well as an endangered species survey for the property, again, before any development activity would take place. And then also going through the platting process, the subdivision process, land disturbance permits, water sewer approvals. There's a whole long list of different permits and processes that we would have to go forward with before any development would take place on the property.
Yeah, I'm glad that this is happening tonight because I'm thinking about claiming him as a dependent on my income.
He looks a little happy about that.
But basically, all the stuff that he just said is not a requirement for light industrial. There's no TIA, there's no endangered species, there's no, it's already zoned. They could go out there and pull the permit and work on it now.
Thank you,
very
Hank.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. I believe we were,
Motion and a second,
I
Mayor.
have a motion and a second.
Till
was all
Mr. Huntley comes back.
Yeah, let's wait till Mr. Huntley comes back, please. I do think it's worthy of indicating that a lot of the questions that we have been asking of the Spratt team are things that you're going to see in the new Unified Development Ordinance. We do hear you, and we do work hard to start tightening the restrictions and criteria to improve development plans going forward. And I do think that it's refreshing to see some of this happening before the UDO actually becomes accepted. But all developers in the future will be asked a lot of the same things. We are moving and getting better at what it is that we would like to see in the development agreements.
And so that UDO is a blueprint, basically, or a guidebook for our planning commission to make these decisions and discussions with developers in the future. So I live in Massey. I think most of us are heartbroken, even though I live there, seeing the way the clear cutting's done. The UDO will prevent that type of clear cutting in the future out of homes and developers, correct? As well as with past the way it is. There's many good things, and it's about been 350 pages, right?
I think we're under 300 now.
Oh, right. Yeah, I got through about 50 some and fell asleep. But, it's important that, again, if you really want to make a difference and be informed as to what decisions we're making and so forth, that UDO is really the governing piece of information that makes those decisions that our staff and our council and our planning commission will live by when new property is coming into the town or is being developed in a manner that makes it acceptable to us all and a little bit more palatable for the growth.
Well, it's taking the comments and the suggestions and the ideas and putting them into working order for us so that it's equity and parity for everybody that wants to come into the town.